Hey guys, Logan here from the Spalty Dog. Today I'm going to be showing you how I made this DIY industrial desk using 2x8s and 3/4 inch black pipe that you can pick up from your local big box store. If this is something you're interested in, stick around and I'll show you how I did it.
I start off by cutting the lumber to rough length over on the miter saw. I set a stop block to make quick work of this. I'm using standard 2x8s on this project and they had some twist to them. So after cutting them to rough length, I took them over to my workbench and knocked down the high corners with a Stanley No. 5. With most of the twist removed, I took each of the boards over to the joiner. First, I flattened one face while making sure to apply even pressure. Here, I'm walking along the board with my push blocks, making sure to maintain pressure on the outfeed table. With a flat face on each board, I then make one edge perpendicular to that face by placing it against the fence of the joiner and maintaining pressure. Now that we have one flat face and one straight edge, I move to the planer to get the boards to their final thickness. All that's left to do is get the final straight edge. To do this, I set the blade height and adjust the fence on my table saw to the final width. I then run each board through the table saw, making sure the jointed edge is referencing the fence. I'd like to add, if you're not able to work with rough lumber or millet, you can purchase pre-milled boards from your local big box store or lumberyard and skip everything up to this point. With the boards cut to their final width, I start planning for the glue up. For this build, I didn't use anything special for alignment such as dowels or biscuits. I just went with simply edge gluing the boards. I applied glue along the edge of each board and spread it out using a silicone brush, adding glue as needed. Typically, for a glue up like this, I would use caul boards to prevent any cupping. However, I realized I was out of packing tape, so I quickly jumped over to adding clamps at the end of each edge joint. Let me know in the comments below if there was something I could have done instead. To finish it off, I added a couple more pipe clamps and wiped off any glue squeeze out with water and paper towels. I let the glue set overnight, then came back and sanded with 80, 150, and 220 grit paper. I would mark with pencil along the entire surface, and then when the pencil had disappeared, I knew it was time to move up to the next grit. Now that sanding is out of the way, I move on to trimming the top to final length with my track saw. If you don't have a track saw, this can also be done with a circular saw and straight edge. Then, using the top as a reference, I cut the monitor shelf to final length as well. I set the top aside and started working on the base, which is made of 3/4 inch black pipe. I measured and cut each piece to length using my angle grinder and a cutoff wheel, and then threaded each end with my pipe threader. Before threading the pipe, I apply a cutting oil to the pipe end as well as the threader to keep everything lubricated while the threader is biting into the pipe. To start threading the pipe, I place the threader over the end while applying pressure towards the pipe to get it started. Once you start to feel resistance from the threader, you can relieve this pressure and simply crank on the handle, making sure to check for clogs and applying cutting oil as necessary. Now, depending on the dimensions you need, you can actually have this pipe cut and threaded at some big box stores for no additional cost, and skip this step entirely. When you're finished, you should have something that looks like this. With all the pipe cut and threaded, I go ahead and clean everything with denatured alcohol to remove the residue that is normally found on black pipe. Now it's time to start assembling the base. I take the pipe and start threading on the fittings. Prior to starting this build, I had sketched everything up so I knew exactly what I wanted the base to look like and what fittings I needed. Here, I'm assembling the front and back sections for both of the legs. Next, I attach the stretcher that will go along the back of the base to help provide rigidity to the desk. After that, I attach two pipes that will connect the front and back section of each leg. For this base specifically, I wanted these closed-in rectangles on the bottom of the legs. To accomplish this, I would thread the connecting pipes as far as I could into one fitting, then position the front section of each leg in place, and finally loosen the bottom connecting pipe. As you loosen the pipe, it will move out of one fitting and into the other, thus creating that closed-in shape. To finish it off, I attached floor flanges to the top of each leg. With the base assembled, I apply multiple thin coats of a black spray paint. After the paint has dried, I come back and apply a satin clear lacquer to protect the paint. While the base is drying, I move over to finishing the top. Since the top is made of pine, I apply a pre-stain conditioner to help the stain take more consistently to the wood. After letting that dry, I apply a dark walnut stain by rubbing it in with a clean rag and wiping any excess stain off after 15 minutes. I let the stain dry overnight and applied 3 coats of wipe-on poly the following day. After letting the poly dry for 24 hours, I wet sanded with 600 grit paper and added a coat of paste wax off camera. At this point, we're done with finishing and are on to the final assembly. Here, I am positioning the base and punching holes on the underside of the top. With the holes punched, I set my depth by using a piece of tape on my drill bit and pre-drill all of the holes. I then set the base back into position and start attaching it to the top by securing 2 screws in each flange, then working my way back to complete the remaining 2. With the base attached, I move on to the monitor stand. I followed the same process as I did for attaching the base, by punching and pre-drilling holes. However, due to the tight space, I needed to use this flexible driver attachment to secure the screws. Here, you can see I'm making sure the monitor stand lines up with the top. I attach a screw on one end, then position the opposite end and clamp it down to hold it in place. After checking both sides again for alignment, I go back and attach the remaining screws. There you have it, an industrial pipe desk that's a great alternative to the traditional style desks you may see in a typical office.
Alright, I think that's going to wrap this one up, guys. So thank you again for watching, and if you'd like to make this for yourself, I do have an article along with a set of plans available on my website, which I've linked you down in the description. Overall, I'm very happy with how this build turned out, but I'd like to hear what your thoughts are. So go ahead and leave me a comment down below, let me know what you think, and if there's anything you would have done differently throughout this build. I look forward to hearing from you guys, and until then, I will catch you on the next one.